Alright guys, back, of course, SRT, work, problems, issues. So, if you're like me and you own SRT, most of the time they're modified. Well, my axle decided to go out, and, I went ahead and bought a new one, which was the cheaper one because it was in stock. The more expensive one wasn't in stock, so I thought, heck, I'll just replace it today so I don't have to wait around for another day to get the part, and I was being stingy and cheap. So I tried to save myself 20 bucks and got a cheap axle. Well, next thing you know, first pull I did, it snapped. Didn't snap, it broke though. It's not completely broke, car still drives, but it's still not good. So, I am making this video for anybody that might see this and think maybe they shouldn't go with the cheaper route like I did. So, I've got a Duralast Gold axle, which is still not like the best, but it's still 70 bucks. So I'm going to be replacing this brand new like week old axle that already broke with that one. So hopefully that'll last me a little bit. And I know there's probably like 17 videos on YouTube that shows you how to do an SRT4 axle, but this is mine. So I'm just gonna start and quit talking. We'll get to it. So obviously most people know, but you always gotta say it. First thing, jack the car up. Make sure you use that jack stand. Don't die. Alright, obviously you need to take your wheel off. You're going to need a 32 millimeter socket for your axle nut. And I think that on stock struts, and maybe even if they have coilovers, the bolt size is 21 millimeter, I think, on bottom and top. But I have a camber bolt, so this one's like an 18 and this is like a 15. So I'm sure you can find the socket size. And then after you take this loose, this whole thing swivels out and goes around. So you're going to want to take the axle nut off first, then do these bolts. And then you'll be able to move this out of the way and slide the axle, or push this axle out, and then you'll be able to pull it from back in that area and it will come straight out. So I'm going to get all those bolts out and we'll show how the process works. Alright guys, bear with me if the angle's not that great. So when you're taking this off, I got all the bolts out, the bolt for the axle and the two strut bolts. So now you can see this swivels. Now normally I don't think you can do it this easy, but like I just took mine off, so and normally most people suggest that you keep the nut on so you don't booger the threads, but I'm replacing this one, so I don't have to, but just use your bolt, tap it out, and you can pull this back and you should be able to move your strut out of the way and kind of be able to push your old axle out, which mine's kind of not cooperating that well. But you should be able to get it to where it's not going through the rotor anymore. And you might have to wiggle it around some and finagle with it a little bit. But okay, so mine's out of the rotor now, and I hope you can see it well enough. So now you can kind of swing it and get it out of the way. And the first time you shouldn't, it's not that easy to get it to come out of the where it connects to the intermediate shaft. But if you kind of wiggle it, it should start to inch out, and sometimes you have to like get underneath the car and use something on this back side, because the splines go into it right here, and sometimes you can use something to tap the back side of this and it'll get it to come out of the splines. So right now I'm just trying to wiggle it out of place, and I'll get back as soon as I get this thing out. Okay, so this is where the splines meet and go into the axle. So this is where I was just talking about. If you take like a screwdriver and kind of put it on this edge right here and kind of tap it, it'll eventually pop out, because once you drive on it, it kind of gets interlocked in there. So I'm gonna have to take a flathead, put it on this edge, and just tap it with a hammer. And you got some room down in here where you can do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this out and then put the new one back in. All right, now we're at the point where we're just gonna put the old axle right there, or the new axle, sorry. That's where the old one came off, that spline right there. So that meets up with this. So basically you just do everything in reverse order. Slide that end first in there, and then you'll bring the other end on the other side of this, right in here. Hopefully you can see it right through the rotor there. And then you just start bolting everything back up. So try and kind of get that process here. And you want to take the axle nut off of your new one before you get to this process, so you don't end up screwing yourself. You might have to wiggle the end that's going onto the input shaft and spin it just a little bit so the splines line up. So now that that's in, you just kind of gotta maneuver this around and get it pointed in the right direction to where the other end that goes through the rotor can go through that. And it's kind of a task, because then you have to move around your strut or your coilover, whichever one you have. And again, you might have to spin your rotor a little bit to get those splines to line up. And then kind of aim it back to where your strut bolt mounts line up. And I always just go ahead and put my axle nut on first, so you don't have to worry about that coming out. And you don't have to tighten it yet. And then I'm not sure if I'm doing it the best way, but I think if you have the other side of your car jacked up, you won't run into this issue right here where your bolt holes are way out of whack. I think since it's in the subframe, that if the other end of the car is up in the air, it won't make your whole A-arm up so high. But what I do is just kind of push down on the rotor, and obviously I can't really do it with one hand, but I push down on the rotor and it'll bring these holes together, and you can slide a bolt in there and start lining them up. So that's what I'm gonna do next. Once you get your two strut bolts in and your axle nut back on, you should have this pin right here, and there's a hole in your axle, and you want to slide this pin down through here. And the point of this like castle nut is so that if something were to happen, this pin's supposed to catch in these grooves so that it wouldn't let the axle nut come off. So if you have one of those, you definitely want to put it back in. So you should be able to just slide it through. and take like a hammer or something and kind of just like tap it to where it goes through. And then there's normally, on the other side of it, you're normally supposed to bend this part up. So once you do that, it won't let the pin come out and everything will be nice and secure. So once you got your pin bent up, it won't let this come out and your axle nut will never slip off. And I know that was kind of difficult to film, or it was difficult to see because I couldn't film it that great. That's one of the downfalls of self-filming. But I think I did a decent job of telling everything, what you need to know. The one video that I saw about changing an axle, he said you had to take the whole intermediate shaft out and drain the transmission. And I was like, I don't think you have to do that. So I just wanted to make another video that might help out somebody that might be afraid to do it. That took me like a half hour to do, plus filming it, so it's not too bad of a task to do. But I learned my lesson. Don't buy cheap axles, especially if you're running more than stock power. So I hope this helps somebody out there, and I'm sure that I will be making some more videos soon. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.